Joining us now on the Megacast, as she does each and every week to discuss topics on the mental health front, is Carrie Krawiec, a therapist at the Birmingham Maple Clinic. Carrie, thanks for being with us today.
Good morning. Thank you for having me.
Yeah, glad to have you on, as today a great tradition here in the U.S. begins once again as the NCAA men's basketball tournament goes underway, or March Madness as it's also known. And now in the state of Michigan, over the last several years, sports betting has also become legalized in the state and has become something that many people are passionately participating in. But like with any other hobby or with any other area of interest, sometimes that passion can cause some issues in your relationships and in other areas of your life. So in terms of sports betting, we know that more than 17% of American adults, or 45 million people, plan to wager in this year's tournament. Carrie, how might sports betting get in the way of relationships? What are some of the common ways that these sort of hobbies can obstruct relationships with your significant other, with your family, and so on?
Sure. Well, like most addictions, you can break down sports betting into a variety of different categories. There's, of course, social betting, which are people who do it recreationally, who may enjoy occasionally placing a bet. There's, of course, with betting, there's also professional gamblers who are very dedicated and use skill, not luck. And that's sort of a whole different department. But problem betting is when you continue to bet despite the consequences, despite interference or complaints from your family that there's a problem, despite losing money, accumulating debt, keeping it secret, hiding it, and the need, the sort of addictive need to continue to do it despite all these negative consequences. Problem betting affects about 1 to 3% of Americans.
And it's far worse, the numbers show, amongst sports bettors than those that gamble in other means, whether be at a poker table or playing blackjack, going to the casino. And it's significant, the differences between those and sports betting. Just how much of a disparity is there in outcomes for gambling addictions for those that are betting on sports?
Well, especially like you said, with the onset of apps, that changes. I mean, I think it's just that we're so, as a culture, surrounded by sports. We idolize our sports athletes, and so we see it a lot. It gets a lot of attention. So perhaps that's the reason why more people are drawn to it. People are connected to their teams, and perhaps maybe in some ways it's more socially acceptable to say, for example, bet on sports than if you're betting on maybe other things. Then people might really call it a problem. And with sports, you can get away with calling it recreational. But the problem is, often problem gamblers think that they're doing it just socially or recreationally when really it is a problem.
We're joined by Carrie Krawiec on today's edition of the Megacast, a therapist at the Birmingham Maple Clinic. You can find more information on getting in contact with Carrie and other professionals at the Birmingham Maple Clinic on their website, birminghammaple.com. As we're talking about sports betting with March Madness underway and the NCAA tournament now underway today, and some of the issues that can come up. And there is a hotline that is available through the state of Michigan for those that are experiencing some issues with problem gambling yourself, or maybe someone else in your life. 1-800-270-7117, 1-800-270-7117 for crisis intervention and referral to treatment. And Carrie, this is different than many other addictions. A gambling addiction may not manifest itself in a way that's visible, like an addiction to drugs or alcohol, where you can see those physiological signs and those other behavioral signs a little bit more clearly. So for those that may have someone in their life that is an avid sports bettor, they may not know that this person or these people have an issue. What should they be looking out for that could be some of those warning signs and set off those alarm bells?
Sure. It occurs more in men than women. It occurs more in younger men, college age and the years just after college. So those would be two signs of certain personality traits. People that are kind of restless, get sort of joy out of risk taking, are easily bored. Maybe those would be some signs. There are some other signs, though, even following losses. Certainly despondency, depression, anxiety. There's some connection to even physical complaints like stomach aches or digestive issues. Any kind of there can be anxiety and depression, sleeplessness, hopelessness, anger. Those would be some signs. Certainly in relationships, like you said, it can manifest. Maybe there's a time when the sports gambling isn't a problem and it is acceptable as a recreation, or maybe it's even a little bit fun to, think that you're winning money. But it can lead to other behaviors, what I call financial infidelity, but that's the secret spending of money or losing of money in this case, which can affect a household. You can liquidate accounts. Your future could be jeopardized. So it's a pretty traumatic thing to happen in relationships when the person who maybe doesn't know finds out. And that person can then have some associated symptoms like trauma, depression, anxiety, and certainly the feeling of betrayal in the relationship.
And so as you're addressing this issue with this person, what steps should you be taking? Because they're already under a mass amount of anxiety when their gambling becomes problem gambling, when it becomes something that is a stress point in their life. And you want to be sensitive as you're approaching this person to let them know you're noticing these issues and you think they may have a problem. So how do you suggest someone approaches that?
Sure. Certainly, as far as treatments go, individual therapy, group therapy, psychiatric medications have been shown to improve and help reduce that sort of anxiety that leads to that impulse control issue where you feel almost like you want to do something and you can't stop or help yourself. So there are treatments available, certainly in the event of, like I said, a financial betrayal in the relationship. Couples counseling would also be useful. It's really hard, like you said. We're going to be constantly surrounded by sports in our lifetime, so people who are sports bettors are going to have to learn tools so that when they're subjected to the opportunity, that they can protect themselves. Certainly in a relationship, helping to supervise or monitor what apps are on the phone, what connections to bank accounts or family accounts are known, to help just protect those and reduce the incidence of that temptation.
More information on ways you can get in contact with the Birmingham Maple Clinic and their services can be found on birminghammaple.com, birminghammaple.com for more information. And there's plenty of protections that are in place from the statewide level for those that may be experiencing problem gambling and for those that maybe have had previous addictions that could make them more susceptible to becoming a problem gambler. And that's what's great about what the state of Michigan has been doing. Is that they've put these provisions in place. You can call them toll free, 1-800-270-7117. Previously, back in 2021, we had the state's Gaming Control Board executive at the time, Richard Colm, on the show in order to talk about some of the other protections that are in place. That's another great place to go, civiccentertv.com in our on-demand section to watch that interview and learn more information about the ways that you can protect yourself too. But this is an issue that can take some time to really get a grasp of, Carrie, and for these individuals, it can take some time to find that point of recovery, especially under the stresses that they're under. And so for those that may be experiencing some distress because of their sports betting, at what point should they have the bell ring off that maybe this is becoming a problem for me, even if someone else maybe isn't bringing that up as, hey, I think you got a little bit of an issue here?
Sure. I mean, I think like you and I talk with so many things, right? It's the intensity, frequency, and duration. How much time are you spending thinking about it? Is it interfering with multiple areas of your life? Sports bettors obviously could have workplace issues because they're not as productive and they're preoccupied with their betting. And so they could, if they're having greater and greater issues at work, issues at home, if they're finding their symptoms, their anxiety, their physical complaints, they're increasing in frequency, those would all be signs, that there's an issue and there's a problem.
We're joined by Carrie Krawiec on today's edition of the Megacast. You can get in contact with her and others at the Birmingham Maple Clinic by giving them a call, 248-646-6659, 248-646-6659 for more information. And much like any other addiction, Carrie, that individual approach, that familial approach too, can be so important. Having that social circle around you, that those relationships around you that can help you go through this as well. So as someone's in treatment for a gambling addiction or is in therapy for a gambling addiction, what are some ways that family, that friends, that others in their life, especially because sports is such a big part of our culture, can help them through? Because even though they may cease gambling at that point when they realize they have a problem or they're in treatment, it's still something that's going to be surrounding them constantly, and that temptation doesn't really go away that easily.
Sure. I mean, I think families, like I said, getting into treatment themselves with family, understanding the behavioral patterns, maybe not the same addiction, but other addictive behaviors that have happened in families, kind of learning the root causes for some of these and gaining that information. Same with, joining any kind of groups like codependency groups, knowing what are your roles and getting support from other people who maybe have dealt with other people with addictive behaviors, whether it's gambling, shopping, or, any of the substance use or misuse issues. Understanding the dynamics that exist in a family can help, and gaining support from other people who have walked that path can be beneficial for both the addict and the family of the recovering person.
If you have a gambling problem and you want help there, or you think someone in your life may need help with their gambling issue, you can call the Michigan Problem Gambling Helpline at 1-800-270-7117, 1-800-270-7117. Another great place to go for resources is michigan.gov/MDHHS. They have more resources on how to help problem gamblers and different treatments that are available through the state, and other resources that they can get you in contact with. And again, that toll-free number, 1-800-270-7117. And Carrie, beyond the sports betting issue, this is the time of the year where a lot of people are really engaged in the basketball games. And sometimes, passions can erupt, whether you're betting on the games or watching for fun or following along with your brackets and ultimately being frustrated at how terrible you end up being at picking those games. So for those that are enjoying and partaking in the madness of this tournament, what suggestions do you have for them to always, keep it in their mind that this is just a game, these are just basketball games, and you're ultimately watching them for fun with yourself, with your family, with your friends, and so on?
Sure. I think, again, like kind of personality, and even the personalities that are drawn more towards gambling, if you have that kind of competitive spirit, thinking about even the messages you're saying to yourself about winning and losing and why you're joining. We've talked before about kind of using that 5-to-1 ratio. If you're having a negative thought, feeling, or behavior, try to offset it with some 5 other reasonable alternatives, right? So like you said, reminding yourself, like, this isn't my source of income, or this isn't my identity, or, there'll be another bracket next year, kind of reminding yourself those thoughts that are kind of soothing. Certainly having boundaries. I mean, one hard thing about March Madness is that it goes on in, multiple days, multiple hours of the day, but giving yourself some boundaries, taking some time and space away from it, turning the TV off, disabling any kind of app with push notifications so that you're not getting those constant alerts. Give yourself some time and space. If you're really struggling to enjoy it, do something else that you enjoy, or do something else that's just kind of neutral or calming, like take a walk, exercise, talk with a friend. Again, like always, like we said, like this intensity, frequency, and duration. If people are saying, hey, like your temper about this is out of control, or this really exceeds what it should, then, maybe investigating why is it so hard to sort of, cope and calm yourself with something that seems like just a game. I mean, I think that being said, is that like also having compassion and grace for people, that people do feel really passionate and connected. I mean, I think even like what we just experienced with state, I mean, Michigan State feels like a part of people's family if you have a connection there. And so feeling excited and joyful when things are going well for state, and feeling devastated when things are going poorly is, would be a normal feeling and a normal experience. So I wouldn't necessarily shame somebody for having feelings about it, but just making sure those feelings are in check. And I think also really being able to restore normalcy is really a sign of emotional strength and high emotional IQ. So yes, you can get yourself really passionate, but can you also get yourself back down to a calm state? The quicker you can do that is sort of the greater emotional fitness you have.
Yeah, and it's a time of the year where, for basketball fans, you are expecting there to be nothing but chaos throughout the month of March in college basketball. And that's part of the big fun about all this is your team can do really well, your team can do really poorly, your brackets can do really well, or can be busted on the very first day. Heck, I've lost in my bracket battle to a coin twice in the last 3 years. I do a whole coin flip bracket. Last year I lost to it. The year before I won all of my pools. So, it goes both ways. Carrie, thank you so much for joining us to talk about this. Anything else we haven't discussed on the sports betting issue, on just the psychology of March Madness that would be important to have context on today?
No, I think just like we've said too, it's just access right now. So really just, modeling good behaviors even when it comes to apps and phones, taking the time to really ask yourself, how much time am I dedicating to this? And does that really seem to match what I think myself is appropriate? And that can be along with the money that's spent on it. Just being more mindful about your use instead of mindless, because that really time can get away from you and be more indicative of a problem.
We're all team good basketball and good sports this season. Carrie, thanks for joining us.
Thank you for having me.